the one-stop co-op shop. Steve here with a review of Reichbusters, Project Vril. Quick disclaimer, I was provided a review copy of this game. And if you're familiar with our other review formats that Mike does in his 5 and 5 review or our podcast, I will be doing a top 5 look at this game, meaning talking about the 5 things you need to know about the game, rating them a pro or con as I go along. Dive in. Number 5 on my list is a con, and that is the player scaling. Put this at number 5 because it is a problem in the game, but it's really not that big of a problem. But it's something that I like to see in games, and I feel like it could have been better here. So what do I mean by that exactly? So here's an example of 2 characters that could be part of a game. You might have some additional skills leveled up, but this is a decent example to talk through it. And so if I'm playing a mission and the mission requires me to have additional items, for example, here's the headquarters where you might start with additional objectives or other items you need to worry about. In this case, I might have additional tokens, like for example, dynamite I need to carry with me. Okay, well, I have to lay down all this dynamite and carry the detonator with me. So I started laying this out on my characters, and lo and behold, well, great. Now I actually have to not carry one of these items I've been using and to carry this detonator. So maybe I'll leave my keys behind on that headquarters. You can get it back later after the mission, but I might have to do something like this. So that works okay with 2 players, but it's even worse because if I have only 1 character, well, now I have to drop all my gear to carry all 3 bombs and the detonator. So any equipment I've gathered through that campaign is no longer available to me during this particular mission. So it doesn't scale well down to 1 player for sure, in my opinion. Now for 2 players, for this example, you can make it work. And there's some additional rules in the game where you do get extra actions. For example, you get a free unlock or a free move depending on what maps you're playing. So it works okay in that regard, but it is definitely designed around the 4 character experience. Now, one thing that it might be a little bit more difficult to manage is each character has a deck of cards, which is awesome in the game because it's really fun to play these cards, but now you have to manage a deck of cards for each character. And with 4 characters, with each a deck of 12 cards, it can be a lot for some people. It's definitely doable. It's not a huge problem, that's why it's on my 5 as a con, but if you're looking for a game that scales down to 1 character per player, it's probably not it. I have played the whole campaign with just 2 characters, and we're fine. I do find there's some tweaks to the house rules, which makes it scale a little bit better in my preference. But as the rules written as is, it doesn't play the greatest at 2 characters. You really need the 4 character experience. My number 4 are Vril items. So what are Vril items? The setting is pretty cool because you run around a hidden base in this World War II setting, and this spin-off or other organization from, well, Germany in World War II has uncovered this, mystical, strange material called Vril, and it's allowed them to reanimate bodies and make really powerful weapons. Well, in the game, you can come across something like an officer desk, and then when you explore it or check it out, you may have the ability to find Vril schematics, which is awesome because what that means is now you can harness that technology for yourself. So what that means mechanically is now I can harness that technology for the good guys, which is really cool. So I can now equip this Vril technology to even a basic knife. Now this basic knife gets a lot more powerful because now I get this critical hit ability and additional dice, which is really cool, or even your gun too. So you can upgrade any of your 2 weapons with this technology. So it's pretty rare to come across this schematic, so you probably won't get much opportunity to upgrade them. And it's exciting when you do, because like, oh cool, I can now get this really powerful weapon. But it comes at a cost. And what does that cost? So when you equip a weapon with Vril technology, you get additional dice, which is pretty cool because normally it means you get bonuses to your test value. So it equates to more damage, like the 1, 2, 3 values on top, or some other additional effects. The star effect is your normal boost effect in the game, which lets you roll additional dice or do other special abilities, which is pretty fun. But also gives this symbol, which is unique to red dice. It's called the surge symbol. And what that means is now my weapon will deal me damage because it backfires because the technology isn't quite stable. So I take a wound, and on top of that, it becomes drained. So I put this marker on it. Now, most of the time in the game, if you have an ability that is unreliable, your weapon will get jammed, which means it's runs out of ammo or you need to fix it real quick. It normally just takes an action to recover that. So So you spend 1 action to get rid of it. However, this side is red. It's drained. It's not quite the same effect as regular weapons. And so to get rid of a drained weapon, what you need to do is you need to locate a vril orb. This is kind of like an energy source. So you need to find this item, spend an action with this item to get rid of this, and now you can use your weapon again. So not only do you lose the weapon while it's drained, but you also take a wound. And on top of that, you have this blank dice. If I roll the blank dice, it is also drained. So if I roll a blank, I also get this token. I don't take the wound, but I do get drained. So 1/3 of my options I roll here, this weapon will become useless to me past that point. And the only way to fix it is to find this vril item. Now granted, this vril item is fairly common, especially when you find the vril item type. So like this type here, there's almost a 50-50 chance to find it. But you still have to go get it. And so it's going to take actions to go find it, kill the guy, and search that item to grab it and add it to your inventory. And you have to then spend this. So it's like a lot of actions to get rid of this one negative effect. I actually really like the odds of it backfiring on you, but the 1 in 3 chance for this to shut down, it's too much. It's too brutal. Now, the flip side to it is you can spend a bonus die here, this star symbol, to cancel a surge effect, which is really good. Because like for this example, if I'm rolling 2 red dice, if I happen to roll a star and a surge, it's still good. I can still use the weapon. But here's the problem with that. I went ahead and grabbed a handful of weapons, just to give you an example of this. So if you look at all the backsides of these weapons in the upgraded form, a lot of them, in fact most of them, roll 1s. And so with a 1 die, there's no way I can cancel the surge result. Because if I roll the star symbol, which cancels it, I can spend it to get an additional die, so I can roll additional effects, just like exploding dice. But the problem is if I roll a surge, I already used this for the additional dice. I can't use it again to cancel this. So the only way to cancel this effect is if you have 2 dice of it, an option, and you happen to roll 1 in 6 chance on one and 1 in 6 chance on the other. It's, in my experiences, it doesn't happen often enough. So it's just really disappointing because you're running through the game, you come across this cool technology, yeah, I'm gonna have this really powerful weapon, it's gonna feel really fun, almost like a legendary weapon, and it's just not worth it. It's too high of a risk, it's too painful to run around with it, to be down a weapon when a lot of your cards in the game say, hey, I'm a sniper, I can make a range attack with a sniper rifle, but guess what? I upgraded it to a real side and now it's drained, I can't use it, so now those cards in my hand are useless to me. You don't actually in this game get additional weapons generally. You do get additional, well, I shouldn't say that, you get additional grenades and other weapons of that nature, but you don't get additional guns and knives, for example. You always have that gun and knife. So it's really, really unfortunate. Now, the benefit to this is they did release an FAQ recently that says, oh, by the way, in a campaign, between missions, I can then choose to remove that technology and go back to my normal side, which is great. Because otherwise you'd be stuck with that weapon for the whole campaign, which would be not fun for anybody. And the other benefit is, in my experiences as playing through a campaign, you don't actually need these vril weapons to succeed. You can totally make it work with regular weapons. In fact, I would honestly just avoid using those weapons and items in the future. And it's just really unfortunate because it's such a cool concept and option in the game, but the risk and reward is it's just not there. And so I have some house rules who I like playing that makes it a lot better in my opinion, but the rules as written, I do not like this mechanic and I don't think it makes it fun for the game. So my first 2 items were cons. Moving on to number 3, which is a pro, and that is the difference between the pre-alarm and post-alarm game states. A huge key element of the game of Reichbusters is this alarm status track. And so generally in most missions, you'll be starting off with the alarm off, and you'll be every round moving this marker down and drawing from this pre-alarm noise deck. And at some point, you will trip the alarm, either by taking too long or doing various loud effects, and then the entire base will become aware of you, and then you'll be moving on to an alarm state where you'll now be drawing from a different deck with different effects, and hopefully completing the mission before you reach the end of the track, in which everyone loses. So let's walk through an example of what I mean by the difference in that pre-alarm versus post-alarm states of the gameplay. So in pre-alarm, I may be running around and open this door, and then now have visibility to this token, in which case we need to remove it and go to our spawn deck and flip over a card, and it says that was a green token, and here we have 3 Bs. So what we do is we look at what mission we're playing, we'll look for the Bs. In this case it says soldiers, and so we'll spawn 3 soldiers in that spot, and then because they now have line of sight to us, they immediately become suspicious of our activities. Now the cool thing is I can do whatever I want to them during this time. Meaning I can move in there, I can shoot them, I can knife, I can do whatever I want. They won't do anything until at the end of my turn, they will become alerted. And then when they're alerted, when they would activate, then they attack back. So the pre-alarm game is all about running into a room, trying to clear out as many bad guys as you can before they're able to do you harm. The other thing that happens during a pre-alarm state is I might be fighting these guys, and maybe I took out 2 of those guys in the previous example, and maybe during that I had made too much noise and had to draw a noise card. I draw that card, flip it over, do the effects, but unfortunately I didn't do so well, and the bottom section says an enemy patrol appears and is suspicious. With level 1 patrol. So what that means is this door may open, and now I have to spawn additional enemies into the space, and now they are suspicious of my behavior. So that's really cool because you could be fighting guys over here and maybe a patrol happens to be walking by at that time, and now you have some other surprise or event you have to take care of and manage. This part is really fun and interesting because it's normally very exciting that things are going to be out of control at times, but it's all a puzzle of how to manage that surprise and that control, trying to regain that and maintain that level of pre-alarm state as long as possible while you have the advantage in the game. Now contrast that to post-alarm game. It's very different in that we don't have awareness tokens, so there's no need to keep track of suspicious or alerted. All enemies are alerted to your presence and they're going to come after you. They know where you are in trouble. Now in the previous example, I should have spawned this token because I had a line of sight on me, but I left it there just for explanation purposes, meaning that in post-alarm, any tokens left over that have not been revealed get immediately revealed. And so you will never have these tokens on the board. Instead you have just a bunch of enemies all over the board. So maybe there's another zombie here. And they're always alerted, so at the end of every player's turns, they're going to come and try to shoot or engage or attack you however they can. And if you didn't do a very good job during the pre-alarm state to wipe out some of those tokens, you're going to have a flood of enemies on the board and they're just going to come swarming at you. It feels very different in the fact that you are managing one room at a time, clearing one thing at a time, to holy cow, this whole base is alerted to my presence, I'm in big trouble. However, in post-alarm, you don't have any patrols walking by because they already know you're there. So now that we go into that other noise deck, we don't have patrols anymore. Instead we have other effects. So now if I'm here and I need to do a noise check and draw a card, I may go to this noise deck, flip it over. Instead of drawing patrols, now we have these barracks. These barracks correspond to different tokens around the board, like here, where you may spawn enemies from it. So now you know that enemies are coming from here and they'll be swarming into this area. And now they're going to just come after you because they know where you are. They're going to be, wherever they are on the base, they're coming towards your position. So it feels very different that you've got just swarming guys coming at you. The other thing I like a lot about this game is kind of how these cards are set up. So they're set up so that generally the ABCs up top will spawn the most frequently. And also the number of times they appear in this list will obviously spawn more, of course. Well, generally down here at the bottom, the J's in the bottom of the card, especially the J, is your uber bad boss guy you never want to see. You may never see him in the game. However, when you're in the post-alarm deck, one of the cards in here is this card here. And there's other ways of doing it too, but basically this is how the J spawns. It spawns nearest to the exit. So now you maybe run towards the exit and now this big bad giant tank monstrosity guy comes in your way. Now you have to deal with that. It makes it really interesting that, okay, pre-alarm, I've got the normal guys, there's a lot of guys around the board. Post-alarm, I have a swarm of guys, giant bosses are now coming out that's ramping up in difficulty. It makes it really fun. In addition to that, now each character plays differently. So most of the time when you're playing this game, you'll be playing cards and they have different symbols on here. This is the noise dice and I roll 2 noise to do this ability. Pretty straightforward. However, there are other cards like this one, a stick grenade. It's got this red symbol on it. And that means different things depending on what stage you're in. If I happen to play a card with that symbol on it in the pre-alarm stage, I will then move my marker forward. So basically, at the risk of making a louder sounds, I lose time. And that could just trigger the alarm early, which is unfortunate. However, if I'm in post-alarm and I play on one of these extra noisy cards, I just have to draw one of those noise cards and resolve the effects of it. So I don't lose time, but the guys hear it and they'll basically spawn and come after me. So it makes it very interesting that you have got these cards in your hand. Some of them are very powerful, but they make a lot of noise. And so do I risk it in the pre-alarm state to like get an edge doing that at the risk of losing time or other negative effects that could come out of that? Or do I save it? Now I have this big boom. And each character plays differently. Some characters are noisy. They're much better in the post-alarm state. Other characters are much better in the pre-alarm state. And some of them are balanced between them. They're just played differently. But it's fun to play a character and try to figure out how best can I leverage this character during the pre-alarm and post-alarm state, because they feel very different to me. So this is a big pro for me. Number 3, how different the game feels between pre and post-alarm. Moving on to my number 2. This is going to be a con, and that is just the game feels messy. When I was putting together this list, I felt like my number 1 and my number 2 were obvious choices. The rest of them I could change, but these were the ones that really stood out in my mind. I don't expect this to change, well, much in the future, with one caveat I'll explain at the end here. But sit down and play the game, and let's say I'm going to play this map, which is really cool, so I'm going to set it up. I go grab this tile, cool, grab 17B, and let me find another tile, I need 1B, and then, oh wait, down here I need 17B again. What? And it's just, okay, it's a mistake, it's fine, it's a big game, but then you come across something else, and this is in the form of the law, we're like, cool, let me grab tile 3B right here. And I grab it, and I want to orientate it the same way, and okay, it looks like the room is up here in the corner, and it looks like I have a desk here, but the desk is over here for some reason. So like, I can't orientate it to match the artwork. And to be fair, this is completely cosmetic. It doesn't affect the game. You can totally play a game like this. It's not a big deal. But after a while, I run into enough of these. I mean, in a big game like this, I expect to run into problems. Don't get me wrong. It's a huge game, a lot of production. I expect to find little issues here and there. But there were just a lot of them. And so a lot of these you run into on your very first play. And that doesn't give me a lot of confidence when I'm playing a game. It's obvious it's a mistake, and I can play without it affecting the gameplay. I mean, none of the stuff is really that big of a deal. But it's just disappointing, right? I feel like you do so much, but there's got a huge game and this big production, and on your very first play, you just find these errors. Like, well, what else was focused on? Where's the focus of the group on that? And here's another example. So I'm playing my campaign, I'm having fun, I'm leveling up, and I go to purchase some skills, and cool, I can buy some skills, so I'll buy some skills, put them here. But then I notice there's other skills that have stars and ones that don't, and it doesn't say anywhere what that's about. And it becomes obvious when you look at it that, oh yeah, these stars are for the character starting skills. But it doesn't really tell you that in the game anywhere. If you're going to define a pattern, and I'm big on user experience, that you define the pattern here, the star, but you don't communicate that pattern to your readers or the players in this regard. Like, yeah, can I pick them? Can I pick them? I don't know. I mean, it seems fairly obvious that when you read through here that maybe these are the only skills I can purchase, but why not just mention that, oh yeah, star abilities are starting abilities, you cannot buy them. Not a huge deal, it seems obvious when you work through it, but that's what leads us to being messy. Another example, and this is just a simple printing error, where, cool, I got these tokens and one of them doesn't have a 2 noise on it. So, oh well, that's unfortunate. Now this one's marked, I can't really play with it now. Granted, this is a frill item, it's the most common item in the game, so luckily not too big of a deal there, but still, enough of these pop up where it's just unfortunate. I'll get into more of some final thoughts, but none of these affect gameplay, but there's just enough of them, and you run into them on your first play, that if you're a gamer, you can play this game no problem. If I was going to give this to someone who's not familiar with a hobby or the industry and haven't played something like this, not only is it a huge game, they might get overwhelmed that way, but the game's not doing any favors for them to help them through the process of learning this huge game. So while there's actually some really good attention to detail in this game, there's actually also some things that I just felt like they missed. Now, some of the things I'm mentioning, Mythic Games is already aware of, and they're releasing material to FAQs and errata to correct these. So be aware that that's out there, and please go look it up. But I want to bring this to your attention that you will probably run into this and you need to be aware that that FAQ errata exists out there. Okay, moving on to my number one. My number one is a pro, and it's a big pro for this game. It's such a huge factor, and that is the card play. When I first dove into this game, I was learning about how to play, and the hero turn, you could do 2 basic actions. So generally, basic action is you can move only once per turn. Oh, that's kind of brutal. And I can attack, only once per turn as well? Well, how am I supposed to do anything in this game? This is a game about combat. But then I realized that the game's really not about action. It's about this, the cards. And so you can't do what you want to do with the actions. It's just not going to happen. You have to play your cards. And each character comes with a deck of 12 cards. And each of these cards are unique per the character. It makes them feel very different from each other. Most of the cards look something like this, where they do various effects. You'll have a top effect and a bottom modify effect. So you have a lot of choices to make. And all these effects are free. They don't count towards your 2 actions, essentially. Some of them, like this symbol here, means it's just a free action. So on your turn, I can play this card, do what it says, and then continue on doing what I'm doing. Other ones, like this lightning bolt, are triggers. So when a condition exists, you get to play the card for the benefit. In addition to that, the bottom half of every card is a modify. So when I'm doing an action, I can then discard a card to add this effect to whatever action I'm doing. And I can do this before or after the action. So maybe I attack and I roll badly. Well, that's unfortunate. It's a dice rolling game. You got luck involved, right? Well, yeah, you do, but you can also just play this card for a huge boost. And on top of that, other people can play cards to boost your effects as well, or specifically attack effects if they're in your space. So that's really nice. Like, I can only move 1 space. Well, guess what? If I can play this, I can now do +1 to my basic move. Now I can move twice as fast. And so the game's all about looking at your hand and trying to figure out how to play these cards to do what you need to do. And with the surprises that prop up, with patrols walking by and enemies spawning, you're going to get into some sticky situations where it's like, well, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to manage this? Who can take care of this problem or threat? It all becomes a very fun puzzle. In addition to these basic cards that everyone has, these halves, you also have 2 feat cards, which are like your ultimate abilities, and these are normally amazing. Just for example, this Angel of Death. Take a quick look at this card specifically. Make a melee attack on each enemy unit in your area. There, no joke, could be like 8 or 9 enemies in your spot. And you can play this 1 card and take them all out, potentially. And those turns feel epic and awesome. And every hero in the game has this potential, has the potential to do something amazing. And it's so much fun to sit at the table, figure out, okay, we've got this puzzle, how are we going out of this? Well, if I play these cards, I can really shine and manage this huge, horrible situation. Cool. Now, this player has this cool, epic moment. And maybe later on in the game, now I can, hey, guess what, guys? I can play Angel of Death and take out the whole room. Awesome. Now I have this shining moment, and everyone shares in these epic experiences while you play. This card play is phenomenal. It is what brings this game back to the table for me. I never get tired of having to figure out the puzzle. How can I play these cards? How can I manage the situation? And seeing these epic plays that everyone have and be able to contribute, because you can actually, like I said before, you can help each other out if some folks are in trouble. It is just so much fun. I'll give you a specific example that happened to me recently. So here's an example of what happened in one of the games we played, where we were having a horde of enemies heading towards us while we were just outside this door, and it was just ridiculous, the number of guys coming at us. But my wife, being the sniper, decided that, hey, you know what? I can play my card, Covering Fire, like I mentioned before, make a ranged attack within each enemy unit within range in 1 direction. So you can only shoot 1 direction. And if you fail to wound any target unit, this card ends. So then she begins to take a shot, and boom, gets this guy. Boom, gets a zombie. Boom, gets another zombie. Boom, oh, guess what? She misses. But then I'm in her spot. I can give her a star. And now she hits. Boom, get that guy. Fires again. Boom, gets this guy. Boom, misses that one. Well, guess what? I can play another card, give her 2 extra dice. And we are working together while she's playing this Covering Fire ability and manages to clear the whole board for us, which was epic. And it's just so much fun to see that happen, so much fun to cooperate in that space and to have sharing these moments. I know I talked about earlier how the game was messy, there's some problems with it, but honestly, this part of the game, they nailed. It is so much fun. Final thoughts time for Reichbusters. Despite all the negatives I pointed out in my review, I really enjoyed this game. In fact, I enjoyed it enough to sleeve this game as it continues to hit my table. The issues I have with the game are either cosmetic or easy enough to house rule. However, because I felt the need to make a few house rules, this is not a straight recommend. I have been noticing Mythic Games responding positively to the issues and criticisms voiced by players in creating FAQ and erratas. I'm very pleased to see their efforts in continuing to support this title because I do believe with a few adjustments, this game could quickly become a recommend from me. Thanks for watching, and as this is my first video review of this nature, please let me know if you have any comments or suggestions to improving this content below.